Business Notes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, President of Performance Strategies and Diane Bogino Development. From high-powered corporate executives to experienced entrepreneurs, everyone has a story to share. Our guest today, Anita Henderson, inspires her clients to see their stories as the foundation for their brand so they can change the world. Known as the author's midwife, Anita coaches aspiring authors to write and publish their books and use those books as leverage in their business or career. She is a book publishing strategist, the founder and CEO of The Right Image, LLC, and the author of 8 books. Anita, thank you for being on the show. It's so good to see you again.
Diane, it's good to be here. It's been a while.
It has. But this is our second interview, and I'm really excited to have you on the show again. You've gotten married and your business is still thriving, so you are doing well, and it's great to have you on. So today, you wanted to talk about the imposter syndrome, so tell us what that is.
Oh my goodness. I think many people, I won't say suffer, but deal with imposter syndrome from time to time, from the most successful among us and beyond. And it really is simply this phenomenon. It's not, some strange psychological disposition that we need medication for, but it really is a phenomenon in our minds that is essentially persistently thinking negatively, persistent negative thoughts about something, whatever, usually about ourselves or our ability or inability to do something, right? To show up in the biggest way that we can, to accomplish a goal that we've set for ourselves. And it is an issue that holds a lot of potentially successful leaders and, go-getters. It holds us back from time to time. And it shows up in a number of different ways, but it really begins in our mind. It's our thoughts.
Yeah, so that brings me to the next question. How does somebody know if they are suffering from that imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome is this thought process. It's a negative loop, right? And you know it, you've got to be aware of it. So you have to acknowledge this thought process that you go through. And it really starts with a thought. And we have to learn to disconnect ourselves from our thought and just realize that I thought that thought, right? So it's a thought you think, and then you attach this emotion to the thought, and then you begin to believe it because we've got an emotional connection to it, right? When we connect emotionally to something, it becomes kind of real to us. And once you start to believe it, then you're looking for confirmation. You're looking all around and you will find it. And once you found the confirmation, now you're convinced that this thought you thought however long ago, an hour ago, yesterday, last week, 5 minutes ago, you are convinced that it's true. So let's take the idea of writing a book, right? So you've been thinking about writing a book for however many months or years. And you think about it, and each time you do, you think, I want to write a book, but I don't know. I don't know if I have a good enough idea. I don't know if anybody would read my book. I don't know if I'm a good enough writer. It's not going to work. So you think that negative thought, and then you start to attach an emotion to it. Boy, I sure would be embarrassed if I wrote my book and it sucked. If I wrote a crappy book, I would just be so embarrassed. So embarrassment perhaps is the emotion that you attach to that thought. And then you start to sort of believe it. Yeah, I hate to be embarrassed. I wouldn't want to, my colleagues would just look at me and just, think, look the other way and think, oh my God, who is she or he to be writing this book? La, 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 right? So now you've got the thought with a negative emotion attached to it. And now you start to believe it. Now you're looking for confirmation. And so confirmation might look like the blog post you wrote that didn't get as much, many views as you thought it would. Or some other colleague who wrote a book and it didn't do as well as they thought it was going to do. And oh, geez, you don't want to be like that person. Or whatever other confirmation that seems to support this negative thought that you've attached an emotion to, and now you somehow believe it. And now all of a sudden you're convinced. You're absolutely convinced that you can't write a book. You're not a good writer. No one would read it. It would be crap. And you keep, and now it becomes this loop that you continuously think that stops you from writing the book. And so when clients approach me finally and tell me, you know, Anita, I've been thinking about writing a book for 5 years. I just look at them and think, you know, you haven't been trying to write a book for 5 years. You've just been thinking about it and convincing yourself that you're not capable of doing it. So you're basically, for the last 5 years, have been stuck in imposter syndrome.
Right. So how does that imposter syndrome influence aspiring authors?
Well, they've got the negative thinking. They've got doubts about their ability. You know, essentially the end result is that they never get around to writing the book. They have been stuck in comparing themselves to other people. You know, I mentioned that, you know, they might see a colleague who's written a book and it didn't do well or whatever, or maybe their opinion of the book was not stellar. They're afraid of failure, right? Which is a waste of time. We all fail. It's a good thing. We can learn from it. So essentially the end result is that you never get around to writing the book. You've convinced yourself that it's not going to work for you. And so you just don't do it. That's what it looks like.
So what can people do to resolve the imposter syndrome and achieve their goal of being an author if that's what they want to do?
I think that the thing is to step up, first acknowledge that you have been in this space of imposter syndrome. You know your stuff, right? You're not going to write a book about something you don't know about. That's the whole point. You're sharing your knowledge. So you have to turn that negative thought loop into a positive thought loop. So when those negative thoughts come up, just stop it. You know, some people have this thing where they press the side of their head or they snap their finger, clap their hands, whatever you need to do. Maybe there's a word and it's just stop. So when you get that thought that says, I'm not good enough, my book's going to be crap, I'm not a good enough writer, la, 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 whatever, just say stop or whatever your triggering word is and turn it around. So you can't just stop thinking a negative thought. You have to put a positive thought in place of it. So instead of thinking you're not good enough to write the book, just decide you're going to think that I am good enough. I really do know my stuff. I really do. I really think I could write this book. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I really believe that I know enough to write a great book. And then attach an emotion to that. How great will it feel when your book is done and it's a success and people love it? And now because you wrote the book, they want to work with you. They want you to speak. They want to do whatever it is the next thing you want people to decide on after that. So you've got this thought, now it's positive. You got this emotion, now it's positive. And now you're starting to kind of believe it, right? The belief comes in. I believe I really could do this. Now you're looking for that confirmation. Now you're looking at, I remember 2 years ago when I wrote that blog post, man, that thing went through the roof. People were sharing it. It went viral. So I must be a pretty good writer. Oh, geez, I saw my colleague wrote a book and she was successful at it. I could be just as successful. That's the confirmation you're looking for. Now you're convinced. I'm convinced I can write a book. I'm convinced I could do it. I do have a great process I can explain. I do have a great life experience that could inspire people, right? I have learned all this about leadership or team building or whatever your topic is. I can do this. I'm convinced. So you change that negative thought loop into a positive thought loop. And now you're on the road to writing your book.
That is great advice. So let's talk about what's one thing people can do to begin their author journey besides call you.
Before you even call me, I would say that the one thing you could do is just decide. That sounds so simple. It's absolutely free for you to decide to write a book. Just decide, right? That's my word these days, like decision. Make a decision. Just decide you're going to do it. Because quite frankly, I am not in the business of convincing people to write a book. I don't do that. I want you to come to me ready. Like, you know, you can do this and we'll work out everything else after that. But I need for you to take the step to just decide that you're going to do this. And so with that decision, you have to know your value because you're bringing that to the table. You know the value. And I don't mean dollar value. I mean the perceived value, your perception in the marketplace. know that people value you, right? And know what that perceived value is. So they attach whatever, and I don't mean dollars, I mean the intrinsic, that sort of, intangible value
Right.
they place on the product or service that you provide. How does it make them feel? What solution are you providing to people? You have to know the practical value that you bring to the table. What are you really doing for people? What are you offering for them? And then you also have to know like the proven value. So think about the results you've achieved for your clients or your team or whomever, your employer, your company that you work with. What's the proven value that you've provided for them in the past? What positive results have you achieved for them? So you've got to know that, come to the table with that. And then we can talk about your story, right? Your evolution story, your creation story, your results story. We can talk about all of those kinds of things, but you first of all have to just decide you're going to write the book and then know that you're bringing some value to the table.
Right. So you have brought some good advice to people. I mean, stopping the negative self-talk and finding their trigger for doing that, and then replacing that self-talk by that emotion. That's got to be a real booster when you have a positive emotion connected with something.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about finding then the reinforcement for the good, not just the bad, because we tend to do that more readily, but finding the good confirmation and the value that you bring to other people. Excellent advice, Anita. I appreciate you being on the show so much today, and I know that people will benefit from this interview. Anything you want to say before we close up?
Well, I would just encourage you to write your life, share your story. Everybody's got a story to share, and there's somebody out there waiting to learn from yours.
Good advice. And people will be able to get in touch with you at the end of the program. I'll have your information on the rolling credits. And Anita, great to see you. And until next time.
All right, Diane, thanks so much.
We've been speaking with Anita Henderson, founder and CEO of The Right Image LLC, also known as the author's midwife. Thank you for watching Business Notes. I'm Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.